Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the MWPA for August 17th, 2023. Want to welcome Catherine Way, who's representing Larkspur today, and our new board member from Muir Beach, Christine Murray. And we're going to take a minute and have Claire introduce Christine.
Great, thanks. This is Christine Murray, who we're happy to welcome to the board. I did a very thorough investigative interview with her a few days ago and learned a lot. But yeah, she's our new board member from Muir Beach, and she is on the board of the Muir Beach Community Services District. Christine works in cybersecurity. She's a program manager for a company in San Francisco, and she's a Marin native and grew up in Corte Madera. So not far from home. Yeah. Applause from this side of the room. And so she now lives in Muir Beach. She lives in a home that her family has owned for years, and she's got, she lives there with her husband and 2 kids. Her kids are 2.5 and 8 months, so plenty on her plate, including the MWPA. So she joined the board in 2020, the Muir Beach board. She filled a spot midway through the term and then was recently reelected in 2022. So she became an elected official because she's interested in public service, like many of us. Her background is in poli-science, and she's also studied done legal studies, and she was a delegate for the state of California. So in getting involved in the community in Muir Beach, she just felt it was a really great way to become involved, and then to become involved in the MWPA too. She brings a lot of unique skills to this role, including first, a passion for the community, evidenced in her board service. And also when she was a delegate for the state of California, she was a vice chair of the endorsement committee, is that right? And she managed the Victory Fund. So she was basically in charge of allocating funds that were raised to contested elections in Marin. So great experience and great public service. She's technically minded. Her job requires lots of coordination between lots of different groups at one time. So I think she can very much relate to the work of MWPA. And she is loves community outreach. She said she loves speaking in front of a group. And so she is here to do that for us whenever we want. And loves learning about people, getting to know people, and getting to know members of her community too. And lastly, when asked for a fun fact, she does what we all do, which is to say, I can't think of any fun fact about myself, but I pressed her very hard. And she said that the most fun fact is that she recently traveled to New York on a business trip with her CEO and met the son of our former president of the United States, Eric Trump. So you can ask her all about that, if whatever she's allowed to tell you. I'm sure not much. So yeah, we're happy to have Christine and really happy to welcome her from West Marin.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome, Christine. Do you want to say a few words about yourself, or is she said enough?
Yeah, I think that was plenty, but I just wanted to express my gratitude for having a seat for me here on this board. I've had a chance to catch up with Julie, and Claire took the time to meet with me, and looking forward to connecting with Mark as well. And also express my appreciation on behalf of Muir Beach for this organization's work, particularly with the evacuation routes on Highway 1, and just the impact that's going to have on ensuring the safety of Muir Beach residents. So just wanted to mention that, and I really look forward to meeting with each of you. I'll be connecting and reaching out after this.
Very good. Thank you. So we're going to go to roll call now, Martina. Sorry, I got out of order a little bit. So
No worries. For the town of San Anselmo, Director Feynman. For the town of Corte Madera, Director Casisa.
here.
For Muir Beach Community Services District, Director Murray.
Here.
For the Southern Marin Fire District, Director Hilliard.
Here.
For the City of Mill Valley, Stephen Burke.
Here.
Director Burke, thank you. For Kentfield Fire District, Director Evergettis.
Here.
For Inverness Fire District, Director Donahue.
Here.
For City of Larkspur, joining us today be Catherine Way.
Here.
For the Marinwood Community Services District, Director Shea.
Here.
For the town of Fairfax, Director Kohler.
Here.
For the Bolinas Fire District, Director Molesworth.
Here.
For Stinson Beach Fire District, Director White. For the Novato Fire District, Director Goings.
Here.
For Sleepy Hollow Fire District, Director Finn.
Here.
For the City of San Rafael, Director Kurtz.
Here.
For the town of Ross, Director McMillan. And for the County of Marin, President Rodoni.
Here. Thank you. Item 4 is whether there's any agenda adjustments today from staff or board members. Seeing none, we'll move to item 5. This is open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the board of directors at this time on matters not on the agenda, but are within the jurisdiction of this board. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphones when not reporting out. Martina, is there any public comment today on items not on the agenda? There's no one in the meeting room here.
If there are any members of the public joining us online who would like to speak on items not currently on the agenda, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no hands for comment.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to bring it back to item 6, which is our executive officer report. Mark Brown, thank you.
Good afternoon, President Rodoni, board members. Hope you guys enjoyed our month off from meetings. I can guarantee you staff appreciated not preparing agendas and such for an exec committee and a board meeting. I know we're all thinking about fire season right now, especially with what occurred in Maui. What's going on in California right now, fire season is starting to wake up. We did have a lightning event with more than 4,000 strikes. That tends to turn into fires. However, some of the higher country still is not that receptive for fire yet. So hopefully most of the strikes were where the fuel moistures are still high. When we're looking for fuel moisture in our area, though, we are trending at average, about average, just a little bit below average for fuel moistures. So it is time for fires to start popping up here and around Marin. And you may have seen some of the news about Hurricane Hillary coming into Southern California. And for people on the coast and that are going to be impacted by a hurricane, you automatically think about flooding that's going to be going on with that. You put your firefighter hat on and you start worrying about moisture that follows the Sierras up to the north. And that moisture provides the opportunity for more lightning. So a week or so following, or less than a week following that hurricane, anticipate moisture to be going up the state and potentially turn into more lightning. So who knows if that will turn into ignitions or not. We are all thinking about Maui. I know that. And a little personal perspective on it is, you know, when my incident management team was assigned to Paradise and had 85 fatalities, we saw the pain the community went through. We saw the pain the first responders went through, and the family members of those who were lost, and quite frankly, the pain of our team dealing with 85 fatalities. And we walked away from that fire hoping there was never ever going to be a tragedy of that scale before. And then we see Maui and see that we have 109 fatalities at this time, and the numbers seem to be growing. And it's been it's somewhat difficult. I'll be honest with you. It's been somewhat difficult for me to know the pain that some of these people are going through and that is being experienced. And it's important for us in Marin to identify the similarities we have with Maui, but it's also important to understand the differences. And we need to continue to inform the public that we are learning from every experience, whether it's our neighbors or it's worldwide. And so when the facts start coming about the Maui experience, we will learn from that and we will apply that. And we have to continue to build confidence with our community members that we are continuing to do that. I do urge you to be a little bit skeptical of the early news reports that come out. You know how the media is, and they're looking for fault. They're looking for someone to blame for this incident, and rarely can you find fault accurately within a week of a major catastrophe like this. So I do ask you to be skeptical about that. So let's talk about some of the things that we are doing in Marin: home hardening, defensible space, evacuation route clearing, vegetation management. One problem with Maui, and especially the homes in Lahaina, was that they were almost arranged to burn. They were built to burn. They were built to have air move through the building to keep them cool. And so now you put that in the fire environment and you actually have construction designed to help move air. The air movement helps move embers. It's definitely no home hardening. So there's a big difference there in Marin. And we have been doing a lot of work on our evacuation routes. My biggest concern that out of Maui and what the public may digest out of Maui is about evacuation alerts and notifications and the perceived failure that is being broadcast throughout the media, especially the lack of using sirens that were designed to tell people to go uphill, which was the decision that why they didn't use those sirens. They didn't want to tell the residents to go towards the fire. So, but I'm still concerned that residents will have their confidence decreased in our ability to alert and notify. So we need to continue to build that. I'm also concerned it's going to re-amplify the messaging of being in your cars and dying in your cars. And the message that we are trying to convey that we would like people to stay in their cars during evacuation. So knowing that, we're going to be able to work towards those. And I think I'll close out with, there's a tremendous difference between the fire response we can provide here in Marin compared to the fire response on an island. That island has 10 fire engines with no mutual aid coming from anywhere. They have one helicopter that can drop 100 gallons of water at a time. Whereas we have 35 staffed engines a day, sometimes more in Marin, and we can easily bring 50 more engines within 2 or 3 hours to supplement that response. And we have access to the world's largest firefighting aviation fleet. Every one of our fires, except the really, really tiny ones, get an automatic dispatch of aircraft. So there is a tremendous difference. We can't avoid wildfire, but our work is going towards limiting the damage. And so that's that message that we need to continue. You probably saw the Dick Spotswood article. I thought it was well written. I liked the emphasis that he placed and also reminding the residents that they have a role. The MWPA is co-authoring a Marin Voice with the Marin Office of Emergency Management on this topic. And then Monday night at 6 o'clock, we're doing a wildfire watch with Fire Safe Marin. There's the little flyer for that. And it's not going to be Monday morning quarterback in Maui. It's going to be talking about what we are doing to keep the public safe and build that confidence. Moving on, I did have that opportunity to present to the Select Committee on Wildfire Prevention for Assemblymember Connolly. Thought it went really well. We had a nice flow. CAL FIRE started, went to California Department of Insurance, went to me, and then went to our own Sashi Sabaratnam. Keep wanting to go back to her own name, Sabaratnam. And I thought the flow was really good. Each presentation built upon the other. So a lot of traction from that. And we're continuing to have follow-up meetings with the assembly member on what we can do to help spread this model throughout the state. Had a fantastic conversation with Congressman Huffman. Director McMillan joined us with that. The primary reason was to get the congressman's support on our federal grant applications, but we were also able to increase his awareness of the MWPA. That was one of our goals, was to increase that awareness level. And then we talked about, one of my other items here is insurance. And we told this congressman that one of the number one concerns, probably the number one concern at the time of that conversation, was maintenance of insurance for our homeowners. And so we were strategizing with him on how he may be able to help, even though he's on the federal side of the legislative, what he can do to help us with the state issue of insurance. Super excited to announce that we have received the final draft or evacuation ingress egress risk assessment, the current assessment. Staff has gone through it, made requests for a couple of revisions. That has come back. We've seen the GIS layers, the data within that GIS layers is massive, impressive as well. The next step is for us, we're taking that report, sending it to our technical advisory team and having them vet that so that they can look at it through their lens of expertise to see if we find any mistakes or any improvements that we want to make of it. Then we'll be bringing it to the full board probably in October. Insurance, obviously one of our number one concerns, and we continue to push for maintenance of insurance in Marin. A lot of it is through educating the insurance companies and reinsurance companies what we are doing to create fire adapted communities. You guys probably all saw on the newspaper, CAL FIRE approved our $2.6 million grant for the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break. And work started on August 1st. We've been getting a lot of good press on that. And I'll close out with, we are having a staff retreat Tuesday of next week for MWPA staff. And what that retreat is about is for us to formalize, document, and define our administrative processes that we have to support our member agencies so they can get the work done in the most efficient manner. And we'll take care of the administrative processes. Also, so that we don't have a single point of failure. That if someone were to have a heart attack, me probably, but someone can step in and someone can step in and easily fill the roles because we have them well documented. And with that, I'll go to questions.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to bring it back to the board for questions. Yes, Barbara.
Mark, thanks. I'm just wondering about the evacuation risk assessment, and probably this is a little personal issue with Fairfax. We've been waiting for that to be available for our CEQA for our housing element. And I know they kept telling me August, which now you're talking about October. Would it be available sooner than that I know you've met with our consultants and we really appreciate that. Just wondering if it'll be available sooner, like in draft or something.
I'm sure we can work around that. One of the things that your folks are really going to want is the SB 99 and the AB 747 routes. And those are publicly available now. And I've already shared that with your consultants. If there's additional information that they would like early access to, I'm sure we can work around that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Claire?
Mark, I'm curious if you have any advice for us in our communities about sort of messaging after Maui. So kind of capitalizing on the moment, but also not creating alarm and building confidence. Do you have any advice for how we're kind of grappling with that in Bolinas?
I do. And I can share my bullet points that what I discussed with the entire board, and maybe I'll expand upon those bullet points. That I think that would be a good basis of what we can share with all of our constituents.
That would be great.
Other questions, Mark? Okay. Martina, we go to the public now for public comment on the executive officer's report.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the executive officer's report, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And so there are no hands for a comment.
Thank you, Martina. Seeing no more hands raised, going to bring it back to the board for the discussion. Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you, Bruce. I asked our town manager to circulate your bulletin for the Monday night talk to the entire town, and she was very amenable to that. So that might be a good thing to get out to the public.
Thanks, Julie. Bruce? Anyone else? Final comments on Mark's report? But I just think it's important to keep messaging that red flag warning is the first alert for our communities, and to pay attention to that. And that sort of starts their thinking and their process. So we need to repeat that more, I think. So thanks, Mark.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep. So item 7 is our consent calendar. It's an opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar, and that'll occur prior to the board's discussion of that item. The board may approve the entire consent calendar with one action. Any alternative items in the consent calendar may be removed by any board member or staff member for separate discussion or vote. We're first going to take public comment on the entire consent calendar.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item number 7, the consent calendar, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself if you are joining us by phone. And sir, no hands for comment.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to board members. Anyone want something pulled? Minor questions?
President Rodoni, if I may
ahead,
offer
Mark.
one additional piece of data for item 7D, the annual cost of living increase for the current MWPA employees. The additional data point is what that actually means in dollars and cents. So that increase would equal just under $14,600 a year.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then we're going to look for a motion for the entire consent calendar.
I'll make that motion to move the entire consent calendar.
Second.
You had 2 seconds, I think, two Catherine, Barbara Kohler and Catherine from Southern Marin was the seconder. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carried. Thank you very much. Item 8 is staff reports, and the first one is the financial report.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item 8, staff reports, please raise your hand in the reactions or press star 9 to raise your hand and star 6 to unmute yourself if you're joining us by phone. And Sarah, I see no hands for comment.
Do we have the treasurer today? Yes, she is there, I see. So Alicia, thank you.
Good afternoon, directors.
Up
Most
here
of our
in the-
attention right now is going to closing out last fiscal year. We're working with member agencies to finalize their projects, and we just sent them a template to use for their annual reporting, which will be due back to the MWPA on September 30th. Once we have that information, we'll roll over any unused funds and amend the budget to reflect that. And I would imagine that would happen in November because that will be too quick, too soon for October. So that's the update on last fiscal year. And then I have nothing new to report for fiscal year 24, which is just getting started at about 4%.
Okay, so we're first going to take item A, which is the July 2023 finance report, and see if there's any board member questions for that item. Okay, and I think we already went to the public on that. So there's no action required. So we're going to jump to item B, which is the August 2023 report. And Alicia said that was about a 4% report. So the year just started. Is there any questions about that report? Okay, any public comment on that item, Martina? 8B.
And if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item 8B, the August 2023 finance report, please raise your hand in the reactions or press star 9 to raise your hand, star 6 to unmute. And sir, there are no comments.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for further comments. No action is required. All right, we're going to move on to C, which is fiscal year 22-23 work plan implementation update. Ann.
Great, thank you. All right. We are just getting started with our new fiscal year, but we've been quite busy. I'd like to highlight some of the public outreach that we've been working on with various partners, including the ESP partnership. We will be hosting a field trip. We're thinking September 12th from 2 to 4 p.m. That's during the usual Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership meeting time. We may visit the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Field Break or potentially meet up with the Greater Novato Shaded Field Break. We're looking at some possibilities right now, and we will let you know what we decide. In the coastal zone, we're working really closely with members of San Luis Obispo's Fuels and Vegetation Management Training Program. They have a CAL FIRE grant through the Healthy Forest Initiative and the California Climate Initiative. And we are working with them on reaching out to residents in the coastal zone and other partners in the coastal zone, the county planning department, as well as the coastal commission staff, and thinking through wildfire resilience in the coastal zone. We've been talking for a few months now and thinking through a webinar and a site visit. So we will let you know when we have some dates. We are also working internally with member agencies in the coastal zone to think through what we would like to do and really kind of scope out our wish list so that we can then start our environmental compliance processes for those additional activities. We've been working with the Fire Foundry as usual. Recently, I worked with the Fire Foundry to present shaded fuel breaks and vegetation management and what the considerations are when you're planning activities, linear shaded fuel breaks, fuel reduction zones, etc.
What are we taking into account? And then while we're implementing those projects, what are we thinking about in terms of slope, sensitive species, riparian areas, things like that. So we really dug into that. And it was a really lovely morning. And then they headed out to the Greater Novato Shaded Field Break to take a look at some work in action. So big thank you to Novato for hosting a field trip there. We worked with various member agencies, Ross Valley Fire, San Rafael Fire, Town of San Anselmo, as well as Marin County Parks and Open Space to host a public meeting virtually last night. It was well attended. We had about 65 people in all attend, and that was a virtual meeting via Zoom to talk through a project. In previous work plans, it was identified as the Ridgewood Shaded Field Break, but we've changed the name a little bit. And so now it's a San Rafael, San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone project. It's a very long name, so good luck with that. With a very long acronym. Yes, Mark and I came up with the really convenient acronym that would be pronounced Sursifers. Yeah. So we'll go with that. So we're looking at about 145 acres or so, right in between San Rafael and San Anselmo. It overlaps the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Field Break. So we've been in portions of that project area as well. The Cedars is in there. We've got Mount Tamalpais Cemetery. We've got Marin County Parks and Open Space lands, some Town of San Anselmo lands. And so we've got a lot of partners in the project area. We started reaching out to Firewise communities and neighbors in the project area and had a virtual meeting with some of those folks, and then had a public meeting last night with an overall presentation of the project and what types of activities we'd be taking on, kind of an overview of the timeline, etc. So just very briefly, this project includes thinning mostly of non-native eucalyptus trees. We've got thousands and thousands of stems of eucalyptus trees on the property, very tightly packed, a lot of small diameter trees, but we do have a lot of neighbors who feel very attached to the larger diameter trees. They're scenic, they go walk their dogs there. So really balancing all of those issues and focusing on the smaller diameter trees. So, you know, phase one of this work would, months in the future, include thinning out of the 10-inch and smaller diameter trees, and then maybe going up to 15 inches. It's a very expensive project. It will take several years. It will be phased. We're still in the environmental compliance process. So this board will see that project and a document under the California Vegetation Treatment Program, a PSA, in the next few months. And so we hope to get started at doing project-related work maybe later in 2023. We'll see how it goes. We do have a field trip coming up for this project. We encourage everybody to come and join us on the 29th at 10 a.m. We'll meet at the end of Ridgewood Drive. Please do carpool if you join us so that the neighbors aren't too bothered by our presence. We'll spend a couple of hours walking the project area and answering questions and talking about these types of activities. We'll have San Rafael Fire, Ross Valley Fire, Marin County Parks and Open Space, San Anselmo, and others join us for that meeting. So join if you can. The Greater Novato Shaded Field Break is underway. Very exciting. We, as with all of our projects, we do an environmental awareness training with all of the crews and the crew leaders who will be boots on the ground within our project areas. We hosted somewhere around 120 crew members over the course of 2 days to talk about all the environmental quality, California Environmental Quality Act requirements, permitting requirements, all of that, so that everybody's on the same page with this project and we're protecting natural resources. We're not working in areas where we're not supposed to be, and we're all working within prescription and knowing when to hold on and ask your supervisor whether or not you can do X, Y, or Z. So we had 2 really great mornings, and now we have crews working on the project. So very exciting to get this project underway. We're meeting weekly and talking through, you know, all the activities, just like the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Field Break, all the activities for the week that just ended, and then planning for the week ahead to make sure we're all on the same page and coordinating effectively. So with all of this work going on, we need help. We, as you know, are recruiting for vegetation management specialist, 2 positions. We're very excited about this. We circulated the application, the application period closed July 10th. And RGS, Regional Government Services, helped with the first phase of that selection process. I believe they had somewhere around 40 applicants looking to work with us. So that's really great. And that also meant we got a very strong pool of applicants to interview. So we're going through the process of interviewing the candidates. We just finished the first round of our own interviews, and then we'll start a second round in the near future. We're hoping to onboard a couple of folks in September, and we'll let you know. So as you know, the CHIPPR program is going strong. We started in mid-May. It's been very active and very well received. Over 2,000 pickups completed already. I think that number is probably outdated and could be higher, and 6,300 or so cubic yards. We're still getting amazing reviews thanks to the great work of Stephen Peters. 91% of those surveyed continue to rate the program 5 out of 5. And this also includes work with the Fire Foundry for some of the larger pickups. So it's great to expand our partners there. We've got an extremely popular grant program. So in fiscal year 22-23, we gave away over $770,000 to about 471 different households. In 23-24, we have $800,000 available in the budget. And we have seen an increase in the number of applicants to use that funding. We have about 84 applications completed thus far and many more in progress. So we are ahead of schedule for spending those dollars. And I'd also just like to say a big thank you to Maria Schmidt, who has been working tirelessly with our residents, answering phone calls, meeting people in person, talking people through the application process, paper applications, online applications, and she is leaving us soon, and we are very sorry to see her go. So big thank you to Maria. So this is a lot of text, but a summary slide with that might be useful in PDF form at another date. But I just want you to know that our member agencies are very, very busy on the ground, crews on the ground, especially now that nesting bird season is over. This is the time when our member agencies are really working super hard to get this work done. We've got acres starting to add up from this fiscal year on top of the acres and miles from last fiscal year. And now that we have a GIS contractor on board and we have a GIS needs assessment underway, and we're starting to talk with our member agencies about what those GIS needs are, we'll have a much more effective way of tracking our acres and miles and incorporating that into all of our metrics. So hopefully in the near future, you'll see a much prettier slide than all of this text. And with that, I'll take questions.
Actually, if I could piggyback on to that and share a couple slides real quick. And unfortunately, this month we are having some goodbyes. Our Grizzly Corps fellows, Elena Benching and Andrea Salinas, their fellowship ended. As you know, we are only bringing back one fellow next year, starting in September, which is Andrea Salinas. So we do get Andrea back. Unfortunately, Elena will be leaving, but she's continuing her fellowship across the bay with an organization that does fire recruiting for the underserved population. So we're going to be able to continue that relationship. And then Maria Schmidt. Maria came to us as a Grizzly Corps fellow. She was here at the very beginning of the MWPA, and she has a degree in environmental science, and being our grant specialist, she's done an amazing job, but that's not her path that she chose for her. And she felt that if she stayed on this detour of her career too long, it would no longer be a detour. And we fully support her decision to move on. She will always be a part of the MWPA, and we'll always value her contribution, and will always be there to support her.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ann. So questions of Ann or Mark? Yeah, Bruce?
And thanks for a great report. I'm real interested in this coastal zone coordination event and just knowing the complexities of working in the coastal zone and the difficulties, the time and the expense that we've experienced here. Contributions that member agencies have made to coastal entities to help support that. I'm really interested in, kind of what's the intermediate and maybe the long game. What kind of outcomes do you expect from this? And my question specifically is, the fact that there are duplicative environmental review processes and duplicative agency review processes. Do you expect that some of the issues that have surfaced that we've experienced over the years this is intending to address some of those and simplify, streamline? So anyway, big question, but I think you know what the question is.
Yes, working in the coastal zone is never easy. We have multiple things going on all at the same time. One is an internal brainstorming planning process. We're kicking that off next week. So many of the coastal member agencies received an email from you recently to set that up and really start. We've got a blank piece of paper, a blank map. Where are we drawing those lines around communities? Where are the priorities? The evacuation, ingress, egress study is a big part of that as well to help inform that. And then in addition to that, we're working with Cal Poly so that we can bring this conversation to the public and really incorporate a variety of different experts into that conversation and invite members of our coastal communities to be part of that conversation. So we'd like to host a conversation virtually via webinar and include some of that, what's it like to look at your coastal agency, your coastal community, and think about fire. So the coastal fire districts are invited to help speak. We're hoping to invite Supervisor Rice, Supervisor Rodoni, and others to help with that conversation as well. And then let's go out onto the landscape and look at it ourselves with the eye of fire and think through these very complicated questions. County Community Development Agency is invited as well to help talk about what their requirements are, what their planning processes are, what their considerations are. There's housing, there's hazards, coastal hazards, there's fire obviously as well. And then we've invited the Coastal Commission to be part of it. We've been really working hard, and San Luis Obispo has many connections with the Coastal Commission. So working right on up the chain at the Coastal Commission to try to bring somebody in to participate. We're still hoping, but they're so low on staff that we do not think that anybody will be able to participate at this point. They've lost so much staff that it's a challenge communicating with the state right now. We are, I've been working with our environmental consultants on strategy in terms of our public works plan and the CEQA component, all that, and we think we're developing the best path forward that's available to us. And so that's what we're pursuing, but we need a project description. So we'll be working with the coastal agencies to help develop that.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a complicated subject, so thank you. I have high hopes, that all these efforts will lead towards recognition of the duplicative processes, the expensive and the time. The Coastal Commission staffing is an issue. If they need to review documents that have already been reviewed by experts and approved, and everyone else is fine, and then they say we need to do it again. We don't have the staff to do it. It's quite frustrating. So anyway, you know where I'm coming from, and I appreciate your input and efforts. I know that you are, of all people in this room, probably Dennis too, well prepared to engage and identify issues and move them forward appropriately. So thanks very much.
Other questions of Ann? Okay, we're going to go to the public now for public comment on the work plan implementation.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the work plan implementation, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, I see no hands.
Okay, anything else, Mark or Ann? No, bring it back to the board. Any further comments? No action is required.
I just have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a comment. So in Southern Marin, I guess I've turned into a single person patrol. Neighbors are doing their own clearing, putting the stuff down by the sidewalk. And as I drive to my brother's house and other places in the hills, I see kindling because like 3 neighbors in a row have done the clearing, but they pile it up. And so I call it in and bam, Southern Marin arranges the chipper days, they get it hauled away immediately. So it's all because of, our interaction with MWPA. So it's really kind of terrific that we can do that. So if you see something, say something.
Okay. Thanks, Catherine.
Sure.
Anything else from anyone? Go ahead, Julie.
I participated in the initial webinar about whatever that long name is. You did such a great job involving the Firewise communities early, and I really liked that model, and they seemed so excited and so vested in the process and informed. And so that was a great way to introduce the issue. And I hope that method can be used again. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was to have 40 applicants for 2 positions is amazing. And to me, that's a testament that people want to work at the MWPA and they want to work for you, both of you. So congratulations, that's great.
Thank you. Bringing it back to other board members. Okay, we're going to move on then to item 9. It's that time of year where we look for election of president and vice president to take place. And we have a couple letters of intent from Julie and Rachel. But I'm going to let Mark kick this off and talk about the process.
Yeah, you bet. And this was a process that we worked on about 1.5 years ago on how to have a well-defined process for that transition that provides for continuity as well as diversity in our chair, our president and vice president. Big agency versus small agency, district versus town. So that's how we came up with the policy. We have the process of the people announcing their desire to become basically the vice president, because we do have the somewhat automatic ascension from vice president to president, unless someone inserts themselves, which is allowable, but no one has done that to this case. We have 2 fantastic candidates for you to consider, and they both have their letters of intent. I'm sure they would be open to any questions of you, but what we are looking for is a motion to move the slate, and then we can take a vote.
Very good. That sounds good, Mark. I do want to give the opportunity for nominations from the floor. It doesn't quite fit the process that we have or policy, but I want to open it up to nominations from the floor. There are any? Okay, we have two members that have been essentially nominated through the process for president and vice president. I want to go to the public for public comment on this item.
If there are any members of the public who would like to speak on the current agenda item, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, I see no comments.
Okay, going to bring it back to the board members for discussion and or nomination for president and vice president.
I'd like to make a motion, if that's appropriate. Should I do 2 at
Put
once?
both together. Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Julie McMillan as president and Rachel Kurtz as vice president. And thank you all for stepping up.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Fairfax and second by Inverness. No, we don't need to do a roll call. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain. Very good. Congratulations to both of you, and we look forward to the transition in September.
If I may just interrupt real quick, thank you for your year of presidency and the support and what you've given to the MWPA. Very much appreciate it. Bruce was awesome for his first 2 years. He was the right guy for the first 2 years. You rolled into a position to help us get into a more mature organization, and we really appreciate that. And unfortunately, we are canceling the recognition barbecue tomorrow. I think summer vacation's gotten away for that. So Dennis's recommendation actually is, instead of doing it once a year, maybe we do it every 2 years, and then we would recognize 2 of the presidents that are off going. But and then staff is looking forward to our new president and vice president.
And I was going to say this at the end, but I'll say it now. It's been both an honor and a privilege to be part of this organization. But really, the important part is the work we do. It's not about this board or who's president. And I really appreciated that Bruce led from that side and led that effort and following his footsteps. And I'm sure that Julie and Rachel will do the same, because the work we do is much more important than any of us. So thank you so much. Okay, go ahead.
Does that mean that we will not have a barbecue and
Not right away,
so
but you can bring me a bottle of wine.
I have something better for you, which I would have brought, but I do have a little pin that I want to give to Dennis, and it is indeed, it's a Smokey the Bear pin. And I only give this to people who've really stood up and within their community, commit their time, volunteer their time to make a difference. And it's been, fantastic working with you, Dennis. So next month, Mark, I'd like a moment on the agenda to officially present him with the Smokey the Bear pin.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go on to staff reports then. Item 8. No, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong page. Going to go on to 9B. Thank you, Julie. City of Mill Valley annexation to Southern Marin Fire District. Mark's going to lead this.
Yes, and just to kind of set the stage is when we were building the JPA language, and I call it the price of membership, what was required for a member agency to be joined the MWPA was taxing authority for fire protection. And that was the definition for membership. It was well defined who was to be part of the initial JPA. It was well defined how to onboard a member agency. However, there is no definition, there is no language. The agreement is silent on how what happens if 2 agencies merge, or how we offboard somebody. And as it was explained to us during the executive committee, that was actually purposeful, because it was becoming to be a little bit divisive while we built the JPA language. And so, and I'll let Megan touch on what happens when the language is silent and how we have to handle that. But I'll just move on before I pass it off to Megan to say that both Mill Valley and Southern Marin have requested that Mill Valley maintain their membership status. And the next question is, how does the voting work? How do the seats on committees works? And staff's recommendation is that Mill Valley maintains a seat on the board, the ops and ATC, and the voting structure remains the same. And what became clear during the executive committee was the need to work sooner rather than later on the JPA language to define this, because as we come up, and it's going to come quicker than we anticipate, the reelection of Measure C, that is something that we're going to want to define. And Megan has had some awesome conversations with Stephen Robb, who was one of the original authors, on what all of that means. And with that, I'll pass it along to Megan.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, with the silence in the agreement about what to do in case of withdrawal or merger, a court, if we brought this contract to court, would say, we're not going to fill in a blank for you. If it's not in the agreement, it's not contemplated and shouldn't be exercised until you've sorted that out, basically. So when we do go back to each of the councils and districts to get approval for some revision of the JPA, which will probably include quite a few amendments, because there will be things that we want to fix at that time. One of those things that we need to do is figure out exactly what we want to do in the case of merger and withdrawal. For now, we think the most prudent thing to do is just allow the status quo to remain in place, basically have all the original members continue to have representation on the board and advisory committees. And when that next go round comes up and we do an amendment, we can deal with that issue. And then also, as Mark indicated, it's been a really actually helpful conversation to have at this point. And, we're 3 years in and thinking about as far out as that seems, that sort of next round of discussions and the measure itself, sort of contemplating the different options that will be available to the board and to each of the member agencies at that time. And so talking to Stephen Robb has been very useful, and he's offered to continue conversations with us because they really, in developing MWPA and that original agreement, a lot was on the board. They were sort of creating it as they were going and trying to make it work for as many agencies as they could. And so now that we're more of an established agency, it will be an interesting conversation to have at this level. And, first, I think at staff level and and then potentially a subcommittee of the board, and sort of thinking about all the different iterations that could take. So, and I think having Stephen involved in that will be helpful too, because as I said, he sort of helped to develop a lot of the mechanisms that are built into the current agreement and thought about lots of other options. So he's a good source for us.
Great. Questions of Mark or Hagan? Catherine?
I'll use my playground voice.
So I appreciate that, because I think we're an example of Central Marin Fire, which was a recent merger in 2018 between two cities, Corte Madera and Larkspur. And as that conversation evolves even further to maybe what could be the potential for the whole Ross Valley, I think it'd be important that our language includes not just two agencies like Mill Valley and Southern Marin as an example of just a duo, but what opportunities there may be if it potentially is a merger of 3 or 4 different agencies. And then how do we allocate responsibilities at that point? So just think that through as we're beginning that conversation.
Thank you, Catherine.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've asked some questions, and I also spoke to Stephen Robb, who was really helpful. I've spoken to Julie some. Some of us were part of the original campaign, and remember at that time that the city of Novato was really pushing to be part of this board, who did not have the taxing authority. And some of us also sit on LAFCO. Dennis has been on since the beginning of time, apparently. I've been on for a few years. No, I mean, Dennis brings a whole wealth of knowledge about LAFCO, but we remember the annexation of Mill Valley into Southern Marin Fire. And I know there were discussions of turning over some of that taxing authority. So I think this is the right resolution for now, but I think after talking to Stephen Robb, and he explained to me there was so much divisiveness around this issue, they dropped it because everything would have fallen apart. But I think we need to start working on this over the next year, this and any other changes, because we don't want to be dealing with this. I mean, I personally think we'll probably be doing this campaign in more like 2028 rather than waiting till 2030. And so I think we need to sort these issues out. And one of the things Julie and I talked about is Jason Weber was an incredible force during that period, coming to our meetings. He's so trusted and so respected that I think a lot of him presenting at our council meetings really carried the day. And as Catherine says, we don't know what's going to happen with Ross Valley Fire. Right now, it's a little up in the air, but we should start really working on this over the next year. We don't have to have it all resolved, but we don't need to have other folks like City of Novato wanting to be involved when they don't have the taxing authority. And I know there's some that think greater representation on the board. I sit on MCE. We have 37 votes on MCE and we're adding 3 more. So sometimes that's really not primo. I think we have a lot of ownership the way things are working now. So that's all my plea is, let's start really thinking about a subcommittee, and I'd be willing to work on it if we decide to do something over the next year, because I really do think these are thorny issues that need to be worked out. And let's get it in the bag before we have to redo this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Other comments or questions? All right. So I'm going to bring it back, go to public comment actually first on this item.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the City of Mill Valley annexation to Southern Marin Fire District item of the agenda, item 9B, please raise your hand in the reactions or press star 9 to raise your hand and star 6 to unmute yourself if you are joining us by phone. And sir, I see no hands for comment.
Okay, bring it back to the board for further comment and or a motion to.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Jen.
Yeah. Southern Marin Fire District. Okay. I would really like to make a motion to allow the city of Mill Valley to maintain its representation on MWPA, which is wholeheartedly supported by the Southern Marin Fire District, and we are now one. Thank you.
Thank you. Second. Okay, thank you, Barry. Been moved by Catherine, second by Barry, that we take this action. All those in favor say aye.
President Rodoni, if we
Excuse
could-
me?
Aye.
Excuse me?
Sorry, I just wanted to add in that they would maintain representation, just Mill Valley would
Okay, the-
continue that sort of second piece of the motion, if we could include
So
that
the
as well.
entire motion is to vote to allow the city of Mill Valley maintain its representation on the MWPA board and advisory committees and provide the city's population, or rather providing that the city population will continue to be attributed to Mill Valley and the MWPA weighted voting system. Is that okay, Catherine? with you? And the second? Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye. No, abstain. Thank you all. That motion carried. And I do agree. I think there's good direction to staff to continue and get on this discussion sooner than later, because you're right. The re-election will come up sooner than we all think. All right, request for qualifications for a variety of vegetation management services. Thank you.
Great, I'll present this. And I'm sharing my screen. Here we go. This is a short presentation, just one slide that I can't seem to get to with my mouse. We're going to use a different tool. There we go. Okay. So the purpose of this item is to support our member agencies and provide some of those administrative services that our member agencies are looking for and that the MWPA can provide. And so we'd like to streamline, at the request of several member agencies, the contracting process. We've worked on that a bit. We have a list of pre-qualified contractors for contracts under 200,000, which is starting to get used by some of our member agencies. So that's really great. This process provides support for projects that also go above 200,000. So the idea here is to support vegetation management core projects that member agencies would like to pursue and that are within approved work plans. We're looking for a variety of different vegetation management services, tree work, crews doing understory work, grazing, etc. And we have a process in place and we're developing templates to help support this process. So what we'd like to do right now is release a request for qualifications with your approval and circulate that for, say, 2 weeks. And then work with a selection team, and that would include, of course, our council, but also other member agencies who'd like to take part, and review proposals or review qualifications and select several contractors based on those criteria that would encourage contractors that range from the very small shops, maybe newer, innovative, equity-based groups, on up to the usual contractors that do a lot of work in Marin already. We really want to, we're a big force in job development in Marin, and we'd like to really spread that among a variety of different contractors. So this provides an opportunity to bring on several different contractors and negotiate master services agreements with several contractors. And from there, our board would approve or consider that those master services agreements. And then under those agreements, we would work to create task orders for each of the projects or services needed to implement core projects. This is an optional process. Member agencies don't have to use it, but we think there are benefits to the process and will speed up implementation of core projects if they do. Those task orders, if they're over 200,000, will come right back to you for you to approve per our procedures that are already in place. And we just hope that you consider this as an optional benefit for our member agencies that could help reduce the workload on member agencies and speed up implementation of core projects. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, Ann. Thank you. Questions of Ann? Barbara?
Not that Fairfax gets this kind of local money, but I'm just wondering if a member had enough local money, I know you said core projects, but it sure seems like having a master services agreement, if there's some way of transferring the funding back or holding the money. So in case there is a need for local projects, once we have these contractors on board, it seems like it would be a good idea to include it as a possibility.
There's two ways we can handle that, and I totally agree with what you're mentioning. One way is if the member agencies procurement processes allow for competitively to piggyback upon competitively bid RFPs from another agency, they can piggyback on our master services agreement. That's one way. The second way, and it's one that we've actually already done with Southern Marin Fire at one point, they transferred some of their local money into our core, and then we spent it as core money. So that would be the other way to do it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chief, some counties have a category of contractors called a small local emerging business, SLEB. Alameda County is one that I'm aware of. And it gives preference to certain small local emerging businesses, which would be a nice complement to the DIE preference that or at least emphasis that you're applying here. I think that's especially valuable to small contractors who don't have the bandwidth to take on the review of a master services agreement as easily as a larger company might. I'm not suggesting they bypass that requirement, but they may not have the in-house folks or the budget to bring in outside people to advise them. So I'd love to see if it could be created without any discrimination. I'd like to be able to see our local small businesses have an opportunity here.
Yeah, and just dug into the language, and we do have that language built into it. And also in our procurement policies, we have that language built in. And what I think is nice as well, just to piggyback on what Ann was saying, even our large projects, the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Bridge, have small segments. So it's easy to segment out for the smaller new and emerging businesses.
Right, other
Question.
Go ahead.
And how detailed are the MSAs in terms of pricing frameworks and things like that?
Let's see, I might punt to Megan to get into the pricing and
Yeah,
to.
we have, so the MSA is actually attached and it's in the packet. So if you would like to see the language itself, but we've defer quite a bit of the specifics to task orders because this is contemplated as a 3-year contract that would sort of serve as an umbrella with a potential, I think we have a 2-year extension built in. So that's quite a long time to have, a certain price set under the agreement. So we would use initially the proposal or the qualification price list that they provide as sort of the basis for understanding where they are price wise. And then when we're negotiating a task order, it would be specific to that type of service. So that'll sort of evolve over specific projects.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, can we check the public for public comment on this, please?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on item number 9C, the request for qualifications for a variety of vegetation management services, please raise your hand in the reactions, and for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, there are no hands for comment.
We're going to bring it back to the board for further discussion and or comments or a motion. The motion would be to vote to authorize staff to release a request for qualifications in substantially the same form as documented as the document attached to the staff report. seeking contractors to provide vegetation management and other services under the master services agreement.
I'll move that.
Barbara.
Barbara Kohler.
Second.
Second, Fairfax moved it, Novato second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, that motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Ann. Executive Officer Evaluation and Compensation. And I think Joan Bonender is going to do this item.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again, and my staff report will be brief. The summary of this item is this, the request is to consider adoption of Resolution 2023-014, approving a merit-based increase in cost of living adjustment for the executive officer. And the board, the executive committee, and then approved by the board are developed an executive officer compensation policy and plan this past spring. And then this action is carrying out the elements of that plan. In order to do so, an interim evaluation was conducted over the month of June, and the evaluation was positive. And based on the executive committee's recommendation, we are bringing forward a resolution requesting that the board consider a merit adjustment of 2.5% and a cost of living adjustment of 3.5%. The cost of living adjustment based on the Bay Area Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers from the month of April. And this compensation would total 5.7% of total compensation and would be retroactive to July 1st, 2023. So the background and analysis are laid out in the staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have, as well as any details about the exact amounts. And the resolution reflects the information that's in the staff report. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that may come forward, and the executive committee may have comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I think I called you Joan earlier, so I apologize. I'm going to bring you back to the board for questions of Jean. Yes.
So I could have asked this beforehand, but I apologize, I did not. On page 3 of the staff report, at the top, it says executive officer approved compensation as of November 1, 2022. And then in bold at the bottom, it says it's retroactive to December 1st, 2023, which I'm sure is a typo. It's probably December 1st, 2022. But is the compensation as of November 1st, 2022 or December 1st, 2022? I think there might be some typos in there, so I'm just confused.
You're absolutely correct, Barbara. Thank you very much for catching it. The retroactivity is effective December 1st, 2022. And the numbers are correct. And so I will go back and check for sure, but it was because of the retroactivity and the timing involved, I believe the correct date is December 1st, 2022.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll confirm
Mixed
that.
me up. Thank you.
Executive committee has been involved with Jean on the evaluation and its work and met several times related to this. Any other follow-up questions at this point? We'll go to the public for public comment.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the executive officer's evaluation and compensation, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, I see no hands for comment.
Okay. And then bring it back to the board for further comments and motion, but I want to read this statement that's required by the Brown Act. This proposed action will adopt the resolution approving a merit adjustment of 2.5% and a cost of living adjustment of COLA of 3% for a total adjustment of 6% to Executive Officer Mark Brown's salary for 23-24 fiscal year. And someone could move that if they like, or there's a shorter motion too, if you like. You can just move the resolution if you like. Thank you, Fred.
Second.
Okay, moved by Corder Madera, second by San Rafael. We approve this compensation package and evaluation. All those in favor say aye. I oppose, abstain. Thank you all. Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Item 10 is committee reports, Fire Safe Marin. Thanks, Jean. I'm gonna call you Joan again. Thank you, Jean.
Thanks, Dean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're looking for someone for Fire Safe Marin, are we, Mark?
They'll be joining us in just a moment.
Which is coming to.
Okay, I'm in. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to present. As usual, I'll keep it brief. The report, I think, is pretty comprehensive. I think you've all had a chance to take a look at it. I would like to point out just one or two things that are a little bit new in the report. One of them is something that's a new program that we're calling the Ambassador Program. If you go back and you look at the older history of Fire Safe Marin pre-COVID, when we were a very small organization, we did make an effort to try to get out in the public, so to speak, in personal contact. And we've been doing other things, small group and all the rest of it. But we've created a program called the Ambassador Program, where we've brought people from 3 programs. Number 1 is some members that do the home evaluations, 2 some members from the Fire Foundry, and number 3 some of members of the Firewise communities. Brought them in, gave them some training, and they have been going out representing Fire Safe Marin at various tabling events, things like the county fair, I'm blank, the food banks, and the various types of events like that. In the last month or so, we've contacted almost 4,000 people, and that means actually usually having a discussion with them. It's a real engagement. We're just thrilled with the program. We think it's really making a big difference. We're trying to expand it and do more of it. We have a lot of events coming up. Again, I think it gives us an opportunity to really hear directly from large and very diverse members of the community about how things are working, what their concerns are, what their interests are. And then it's an opportunity for us to put out a message that is very easy to remember, because when you've actually met with somebody, it kind of sticks with you and you move forward. So we're really excited about that. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that going forward. And then the second thing is in what we think of as the ADAPT campaign, which is multi-pronged, but a lot of it is in the digital and social media world. We've been doing that for 9 or 10 months now, and we're taking a hard look at it, and we're going to be making some changes to that to make it just that much more effective. Probably by the next time we do a report to all of you, we can explain what those will be. But it's really spreading out the way we do the outreach a little bit more. I think you'll see more science out in the streets and a different way, in some cases, of targeting people in the digital world, and maybe a little bit more edginess to the campaign and so forth. So there are a few big changes coming up. Meanwhile, as you can see, we're very busy and going forward and very excited about it. And the one last thing is we do have a new Firewise liaison. His name is John Paulson. Some of you from Southern Marin may know him. He was a Mill Valley resident. He's been very active in the NRG program down there. He serves on a number of committees there, and we think that he's going to be just another great addition to Fire Safe Marin. And like Mark was saying, unfortunately, one of the members of the team is moving on, Josh Hampshire. Some of you knew him. He did a really good job for us, but life changes, and Now he's doing some other things. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thanks, Rich. Questions? Go ahead, Julie.
Rich, thank you for doing the Monday night wildfire watch on Maui. I've had a lot of people ask me if that's going to be recorded.
Yes, just for the group, it will be live on Marin TV, but it also will be live through Facebook Live and basically a webinar format. And then, of course, it will be recorded. And any questions that are presenting to us, I'm expecting a pretty big attendance and a lot of questions. Anything we don't get to, all the questions that are answered will also be posted on our website. So the recordings, all the answers to every single question. And then Marin Community TV, they show these programs over and over. Typically, they'll run something like this 30 or 40 times. So it'll be, if somebody misses it, there'll be a lot of opportunity for them to see it.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
Thanks, Rich. One thing I noticed was one of your videos on page 8 says something like in Marin, every home will be inspected. And I think we might want to change that to most homes because we know that Tiburon and Belvedere won't be inspected. But we also know that the inspections are concentrated in the WUI. So maybe it'd be better just because we don't want people complaining that they're not inspected. The other thing, I just want to make a plea to folks sitting here. Every time I see something coming out of Marin wildfire or Fire Safe Marin that looks like it's something the members of Fairfax would be interested in, I try to make sure we get that in our newsletters for the town. And I know most of you have town newsletters, so I'm sure everybody's trying to do that. But it also creates kind of that ownership that we are part of MWPA. And so consider that if you haven't done it yet, I think it would be great. And not all the time, obviously, but Rich, thank you for all your hard work and your team's hard work. You guys are just invaluable partners. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We will make that change. Thanks for calling it our attention. And for those of you who don't know it, every month or so, we do put out a package to all the towns, the PIOs and whatnot, with basically a bunch of cut and paste type of materials. And if you can repost that stuff, we would really appreciate it. Obviously, anything that MWPA is interested in, we include that in the packages. So it's boosting that message like that, particularly on social media and so forth, is huge. And I really appreciate your recommendation. Everybody get on board with that. If you have any questions about how that works, please feel free to give us a call. Jen Ghana, I think most of you know her. She's the one who coordinates that program.
The other questions? Okay, let's go to the public on this item, please, Martina.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the Fire Safe Marin report, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself if joining us by phone. And sir, there are no hands for comment.
I'm going to bring you back to the board for any further comment. There's no action required on this item. All right. We have no advisory technical committee or operations reports today. We can move to item 11, which is acknowledgement of minutes of the executive committee and the citizens oversight committee. Again, no action is required. Any questions about either one of those? All right. Item 12 is any board member requests for future agenda item.
I would like to inform the board that we will be having a presentation on One TAM's forest health strategy in September, working with Danny Franco for that presentation.
Very good. I know one board member will be happy to see.
You'll be amazed.
Very good. Anything else for future agenda items? Yeah.
I just, if we're done with that future, if I
Go
could
ahead,
make a
yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let everyone know that Inverness Public Utility Board just celebrated their 75th anniversary last week. And that includes, of course, the Water District and the Volunteer Fire Department. And we have a presentation at the Jack Mason Museum. It shows old photos of kind of the trajectory of our fire district. Also has pictures of the Vision Fire, the Moncus Fire, and the Woodward Fire, of CAL FIRE and our volunteers serving to contain those fires. So if you're in Inverness, wanting to get some oysters or something, please stop by and view our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Anything else? All right. So we are adjourned to September 21st. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dennis.